Use your microphones tonight. All right. We'll call the special town board meeting of March 16th, 2026 to order at 5:30. The purpose of this special meeting is to discuss and act on staffing and organizational matters, including potential adjustments to the township's administrative structure and related duties. And Alicia, could you do roll call, please?
Supervisor Lametti.
Here.
Supervisor Cole.
Here.
Chair Olson.
Here.
Supervisor Henriksen.
Here.
Supervisor Lucky.
Thank you. All right. So as we talked here 6 days ago, is just trying to get a perspective from the board with assistance from staff on how the board envisions the office staff working, the roles and responsibilities of jobs. We talked a little bit about it during our budget sessions. So we did budget for 4 staff members in there, 2 full-time, 2 part-time. So we had directed our town attorney, Mark, to do the job descriptions. They were completed quite a while ago. So those you'll find in the documentation. We'll take a walk through that in a second. But try to get some discussion from the board and from staff on how we want the office to work. We can modify then the job descriptions based on that, get those approved hopefully at the next meeting by the board, if everybody's on board with that. Then any open positions, we can start filling those. If we're gonna move people around, this would be the time to do it. So that's kind of what, at a high level, what we talked about at that last meeting. So in the documentation here, the meeting minutes are in here. So it was to discuss these goals, which I just covered, review these documents, discuss possible office changes and structure. That's just free form. Just need more of a workshop type, and just kind of go through that. Possible board motions, if the board's comfortable moving forward with some business, we can make motions at that point. And then if there's anything that's outstanding for action items or research that we have to do, we'll get that documented so that we can have people assigned to it and follow up on that. So in the documentation, what I did was I took Mark's job descriptions, or the job descriptions that we had Mark do up for us based on our past stuff. And you'll find that the first one here is called Town Clerk. It's 3 pages. And then that is without the coordinator duties in there. I removed the section for that and any reference to it. The next one says town clerk, and then I just put a C next to it because I forgot to change the title. That would be the town clerk with coordinator activities. And that should be section E or H. Section H in there on the 3rd page identifies those coordinator roles. The 3rd in here is the accountant treasurer. So this is as was defined. And then the next one is accountant treasurer with a C next to it. Again, I forgot to change the title. And what I did was I took the section for coordinator and I embedded it in with the accountant treasurer. These are just options. It's not a recommendation. It's just options to consider. And then the next one is office assistant. So right now the 2 part-time positions are defined as office assistant. So if we can agree on what this is from a core standpoint, you'll also notice that under primary responsibilities, there's some additional duties that can be assigned. So if we want subject matter experts over anything like planning and zoning, those kind of things, we can define that under the extra duties. The next one is one that we actually abolished. We abolished it back a while ago, about a year ago. This was a position that was defined as office administrator. I only put it in here because, depending on the coordinator role, is if it's defined independently from the other ones, this may be a starting point or a launch point for defining the roles and responsibilities. So I'm not suggesting we bring back office administrator, but it's just information for the board to have at their disposal. The next one, I think I'm missing that page. Yeah, that's the org chart. Sorry if sorry if I stapled it upside down on you guys, but so that was the org chart that we passed out here back some time ago. Just as kind of a starting point, because I've never been able to find an org chart for the township. So obviously that's a start point, but it can be changed in any way. The last document is that's got some orange text on it. This is what I had presented to the board at the first meeting in January, just as a little bit of a different department assignments. So again, this documentation is simply for reference. And hopefully it can foster some conversation and some suggestions and changes and whatever we need to do. So that's the documentation in the packet. Is there any questions on any of that or comments before we move on? Mark?
Just a question here with respect to this organizational chart. You know, we've talked about supervisor in different capacities over time. There's obviously, you all are supervisors of the town board. There's also supervisor, meaning the managing, you know, entity or manager of a person. So where supervisor is used within here, I see you have seat A through E, which is obviously the elected officials.
Yep.
When supervisor is used throughout here, could you explain what supervisor means, just so I have an understanding?
Yeah, this was actually created like back in 2024. There was kind of two different versions of what I had put together back then. All it was trying to define, is a supervisor in line as like a department manager, or is a supervisor a dotted line off to the side as a liaison? And I think the one I printed out was the one with a dotted line over for a liaison, if I remember right. So that was just a slice in time in 24 as far as how I seen things working.
I see.
But that next slide is probably closer to what we're gonna get to. That one with the orange text.
I see. So there are, it's kind of hard to tell the way it's printed, but the lines out to supervisor that run horizontal are dotted lines.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, when I got on the board and I asked what we were on these committees, it was defined just a conduit of information, and not in the line of chain of command.
Perfect. Thank you.
That was the best way to depict that. So, so thoughts on a structure, I think is kind of, I guess, questions first, and then maybe get into what your thoughts are as far as a structure. We've kind of thrown it around to have a coordinator position melted in with the clerk's position. But that doesn't necessarily have to be under clerk. It could actually be under anybody. We've also, back quite a while ago, as we were spitballing some ideas, we also talked about having that as a specific role. You know, to where you are only coordinating everything. I mean, there's a lot of workload underneath that. There's also an option out there that we haven't got too deep into, is the possibility of combining the clerk and the treasurer roles together, depending on what that workload might look like.
And I can speak to that just a little bit. So the whole board is aware that process does require elector authorization and a ballot question that would come at the election in November. One thing that I will note just in reading the language of the statute is that a combination of the clerk and treasurer position, I'll just read the statute so it's really clear. It's 36736. This is kind of how the statute contemplates that transition happening. I was just reading about this before we started. So A, in a town in which option D, which is the combined clerk treasurer option, is adopted, the incumbent treasurer shall continue until the expiration of that term. Thereafter, at any time a vacancy other than a temporary vacancy under 36703 occurs in that position, the duties of the treasurer will be prescribed by law shall be performed by the clerk. So just to make clear how that's working, that eliminates the treasurer and moves everything over to the clerk. So just understand that that would be the process if you go through that ballot question and how that would play out.
That's helpful. Thank you. Anybody have thoughts on what you'd prefer for office staff? And I'm not going to put staff in a position where you're being asked questions so you feel obligated to answer, but You guys, this affects you guys most. So your input is extremely valuable and invited. So if anytime you got something you'd like to share, please chime right in.
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
I would just like to say from an office perspective that the clerk and the treasurer are two very vast, different positions. And it would have to take somebody on a much higher level than what we have now as clerk to be able to perform both of those duties.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, my concern's kind of similar, which is like, I feel like both of these roles are very intense. And so I have a hard time imagining how either one would work if they were combined, let alone. And as much as I believe we needed a coordinator, but also I have a hard time envisioning how that either of them would take on the coordinator role in addition to those responsibilities. So my big concern is more like workload. I think we need, obviously we have to have a clerk, have to have a treasurer, and I think we really need a coordinator. But I have a hard time believing that we could combine any of those roles without that person failing.
And I think all of the conversations being had here completely legitimate, trying to consider capacity for one individual to do a job. I will just remind the board that, I want to be careful of towing a line tonight because we do have employees present. This is not a personnel review of any one employee. It's not talking about the capacity of any of your current employees, but we may consider, is this too much for one job to take on, right? But we're not going to talk about current employee performance of anybody who's here, who's not here, et cetera. It's just a conversation about the roles and opportunities for what we think one job should have for that job, not for a person.
Yeah, thank you. I should have covered that earlier, but yeah, that's why with org chart and stuff like that, it's just purely talking about the positions, not the people in the positions. So, you guys happy the way it's working right now? I mean,
Yeah.
Okay, so we got to change something, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's a supervisor's job to go in and mess with office staff or any other staff. I think that we need somebody in charge that's gonna manage the staff and then we deal with them, the one person in charge.
Function more as a hourglass. That whoever that person is or whoever has that role of coordinating is the person that's between the day-to-day operations, the employees and the board then. I agree, Dan. Andy, thoughts?
Yeah, I was all for somebody at the top. I too feel it's too much to try and combine. To me, I think it's more about getting an actual count and then seeing what those roles are. Because I think you'd still have, coordinator, director, and they have other functions within managing other staff. Then you start looking at span of control and how many people you got coming to you and then duties under that. That's why I feel it should be separate altogether and not be, the clerk in charge of the town. That person is in charge of the clerk, whether that becomes combined. Now you still have a 2-person head count and you can add assistants. But yeah, I agree, trying to put it all on one person is gonna be a recipe for disaster.
And I'll say that the coordinator position is the one here that really is, you have the greatest discretion with because it's not statutory. Your treasurer and your clerk both have statutorily prescribed duties that they must engage in. Other than that, though, if you go beyond the scope of, let's just take clerk, for example, that's Minnesota Statute 36711. It's got a whole list of prescribed duties for the clerk. And then there are some other duties sprinkled throughout other various statutes like elections. Clerks oversee portions of elections by statute. But if there's anything above and beyond what a clerk or a treasurer statutorily asked to do, those can get moved around, put different places, given to the coordinator. So that's where you have discretion. But I will just bring to your attention that there are certain components of the clerk role and the treasurer role that are just statutory by nature, and those you don't have discretion over changing.
Yeah, I think, and I could be wrong, but I was looking at some of the larger townships. And I know at least one, and I thought it was a White Bear, but I could be wrong. But they have combined their clerk and treasurer positions. But they are really focused on the statutory deliverables, not all the extra stuff that we typically put on our clerk and on our treasurer. So if they are combined, I think that we would have to really be cautious to make sure that they're not picking up all those extra duties and they're focused on the statutory requirements.
Strip it down to just the essentials.
Yep. Yep. And if they have a little time to help in the office with other stuff, that's fine. But, you know, if we do combine them, I think that that would be what we'd want to do. And like Mark said, then those other things would be spread around to the others.
But they couldn't be combined until November.
Correct.
Right.
Technically, it would be a ballot question in November, go into effect
Mm.
the new year in February. But one thing that I'd note too, just from kind of helping you conceptualize what are those statutory duties and whatnot without pulling up the statute, is the way I've structured the job descriptions, in particular for clerk, contains the statutory duties under provision A. And then there are just a few other duties, you know, that I don't cite directly to statute, but like C, for example, election administration, that's also statutory. But a lot of this other stuff that's in here, cemetery administration, licensing and permits, you could move those out to a coordinator role. You could give it to a zoning administrator for licensing and permits. You know what I mean? There's a lot of discretion that you have over that, and you could really trim the clerk role down if the board so desired, and then find other, you know, buckets for the other duties to go into, whether you create a new position or move them into existing ones.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, if you look back at our previous clerk, she had a lot of duties way beyond statutory requirements. And that's what she utilized the deputy clerk for, that was working 20 hours a week, and other staff. So,
I disagree.
I don't mind, if they're very brief. Yep, but you gotta speak in the mic, because otherwise nobody will know who you are, what you're saying.
Sandy Lathrop, 706 Fond Lake Drive. I think what you're talking about makes perfect sense, and you guys have a big job ahead of you to try to come up with a job description. But before our previous treasurer was treasurer, it was never a full-time job. A treasurer in our size township is definitely not a full-time job. However, she was given many more duties to make it be that way. The same with the clerk. Before our past clerk, the long-term clerk that we had, by the end, her clerk duties were down to 5 hours a week by statute, and then other staff were given it. So you have a lot of leeway on how you want to structure it. And as far as like the elections, they used to hire an election judge. The clerk was over it, but they actually would hire one. So you have a lot of leeway. So again, you got a lot of work ahead of you to try to figure it out, but I would hope you don't jump into it, but really look at how you can divvy up the duties between different people. My one concern about you trying to combine them is if you have to replace that person, you now need to find someone who can handle the clerk duties and know bookkeeping and do the treasurer thing. So I think one person could do that, maybe not manage the office. However, you're limiting yourself to the future when that person may or may not work out, but I think in that reason, you might want it to separate, but I do think you can come up with good job descriptions and limit it. That doesn't mean the treasurer would have to go to part-time. It just means that they're going to get a lot of the other duties thrown onto them along with it.
Sure, correct. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate
Yeah.
that. Yep. Yeah, I had looked back originally a long time ago, before we had a treasurer that was full-time. And yeah, I think it was 15, it varied between 15 and 20 hours roughly a week for the treasurer duties. But like Sandy says, that she got a lot of other things thrown on her plate besides the statutory duties. So, yeah, and the reason why we're meeting this early is, what was it, Mark, 74 days before an election, we have to have our ballot question. So,
Yeah, comfortably, I'd want to do 84 just to make sure I'm triple safe, because that's the affidavits of candidacy deadline. Because you don't actually have to file any affidavits of candidacy, receive them. I think it is 74 for the ballot question. But yeah, that's why we're talking about it this far in advance, because there's a substantial runway if we do want to put that ballot question on the the ballot, that we would need to do it far in advance, and I can confirm that exact deadline, but
Okay.
fairly certain it's 74.
Perfect. Yeah, so that should give us plenty of time to work through this if we need extra time to work through some action items or investigate some
I'm
things.
against the combining them. I don't think
Against it?
that's right the way to go. So I think it's too much for one,
Combining
it's
the
just too
coordinator
much.
with or the clerk and treasurer.
the clerk. Just- There's too much power in one person.
What about combining either clerk or treasurer with coordinator?
As long as it's specific to, they have a decent, we have something written up decent to what their jobs are for coordinator, you know.
Yeah.
I think I'd be all right with that, but
See, one of my thoughts that I was trying to keep in mind too is budget. If we combine, I mean, we have three significant roles that would need to be handled. And if we split it into three separate people, those roles are going to require much more wages. So that is not within our budget that we outline for this year or 27. So then to me, we would have to be putting together a vision of what we want to see long-term and then something interim to get us to that point where if we combine at least two of those functions into one, now you've got two more significantly paid positions rather than three. So I think from a budget standpoint, it makes sense to somehow mix some of this stuff.
I will note too, just to echo some of the ideas of when you consolidate, if somebody leaves, even if they don't leave permanently, I mean, you can think about the really lax leave laws in Minnesota now, be it paid family medical leave. You know, somebody could take 20 weeks in a given year and you're trying to find somebody who's going to juggle the task of both clerk and treasurer on an interim basis for 4 months and then be willing to step away from that once the individual comes off of leave for whatever reason they're on leave for. You know, it's also just something to think about when you consolidate that much responsibility. If somebody does step away for whatever reason, be it temporary or not, you got to find a stopgap.
Sure. Makes a lot of sense. Joe?
Mr. Chairman and board members, I had a question about the flow chart that you had out here for public review and that there. And I also have a concern about where the planning commission sits in this whole roll of things. Because you have them minimized. You don't even show it under this flow chart. Town board, planning commission isn't even reflected in that. And I know that the township hired a planner last fall. And I didn't know about it until December sometime, and I felt that there should have been communication between the board and planning commission. And again, it didn't happen. I found out about it it isn't even in the minutes. The November minutes don't reflect when this changeover happened. And I felt that the town board should have been in communication with planning and zoning about this change. And I have asked several times different people to get me in contact with this zoning company or whatever your planning company. And I have yet to hear word one from them. And I don't feel
Joe,
that is
Joe,
proper.
Joe.
Go ahead, you say what you want,
No,
but
no, here's the thing. I just want to make sure that we stay on focus on the purpose of the
Okay,
meeting.
okay,
Because
then the flow
otherwise we have
chart on
trouble.
the previous page with the blue thing in that there. You've got the planning and zoning is down here under other committees. Planning and zoning has a higher responsibility than parks and road and bridge. In our statutes, in our ordinances, it does. And I think that unless you're planning on eliminating the planning and zoning commission, they should be somewhere in I want to call it the planning and zoning should be for long-term planning and variances from the existing ordinances. But planning and zoning should be involved in whatever Parks wants to do, whatever Road and Bridge wants to do, whatever this stuff. It should come through, in my opinion, the way I understand the flow chart stuff. Planning and zoning should be key in what future expenditures are and which future plans are in the development of our township. And the whatever they call it, the comprehensive plan. I mean, we have to review that every so many years. It's a responsibility of planning and zoning to go through that and establish and update it. And yet they don't seem to be a priority in your flow charts that are here. And I just feel like somewhere along the line, the board is either not recognizing the responsibility of planning and zoning according to our ordinances and the ability to formulate a long-term plan for the township as far as development and stuff. Some of the things, even like job descriptions, that's not in the plan. That's more personnel or human resources type of stuff. And that's been kicked around for 10 years, one way or the other. I know that. But I think planning and zoning needs to be, well, higher up on the flow chart here than what you show here. Unless you plan on eliminating planning and zoning, and I don't think you can.
No,
So-
that wasn't the intent behind the flow chart. There wasn't one, so it was just a first kick at it. There was no disrespect intended by it. Tonight, our focus is gonna try to be
The
on
office.
the office stuff. And then I guarantee you that we're gonna be visiting the same kind of process for the different committees as well, departments and committees. So it's just, we're trying to start with the office because that's kind of the nucleus and then work our way through the rest of it.
Will planning and zoning in the future have a recording secretary for our minutes?
Yeah,
I'm
please.
confused why one of your members isn't a secretary.
Because planning and zoning is required to have fairly exact minutes, especially with public hearings. They have to be verbatim, and an attorney can speak to that. But when it comes to public hearings, you have to have somebody that's capable of transcribing them to what they need to be. And to have a layperson doing that, I think planning and zoning has a little more responsibility to the township than Parks Commission or Road and Bridge or even Senior Center or whatever. I mean,
Okay.
planning and zoning, and the attorney may speak to that, but I believe that in our ordinances, they have more responsibility and they should have a qualified, legitimate transcriber, somebody that can put the minutes together in an adequate.
I think there's been a lot of questions about that. So when we do go into the different committees, that's something that we'll address too. And I don't, this is just me, I'm one of 5 people. What I'm trying to do is I want to try to bring the board through this process quick. I don't want to be sitting here working on this in December. So we will come back and then get into the details about like you're talking about, because clearly Dan has a question about recording secretary and why you don't have one and who it is. So we will deal with that.
Do you know how much
At the
planning
time.
and zoning members get paid?
Now
Less
you're off
than
topic
300
again.
bucks a year. Okay.
Okay.
So don't tell me about, if you're gonna hire somebody as an office staff, I mean, they need to be qualified. Somebody on planning and zoning could do it, but I don't think it's appropriate to require that.
And we'll have that discussion. If you don't think so, that's fine.
Every other
Um,
committee I've
right,
been on,
right.
they
Oh,
have secretaries, so.
So
But no other,
we will get to that, or again, we're kind of getting off topic here.
And just for purposes of, I know meetings are recorded here, so for purposes of the record, the November 12th, 2025 meeting minutes do reflect a 5-0 vote to contact Cindy Nash for collaborative planning services. Just so that's cleared up for sake of the record, the minutes are complete in that respect. I'm looking at the November minutes from the website, sir, and it says, sounds good. It says Cindy Nash has been contacted to discuss providing interim contract services for the position of zoning administrator. All ayes, motion carried 5-0.
All right.
you look at the
Thank you.
township site, it is there's a gym, but no minutes on the township. Okay, never. mind.
Yeah. Check it. They've been posted recently. They've all been updated.
Just a really quick question. Don't you have to get a clerk appointed really quick, an interim clerk? Before we even worry about the future? Like, who's gonna sign your things right now without a clerk?
I don't think we can answer that.
So the board doesn't have to be concerned with having a clerk right now?
Nope, it's
Okay.
taken care of. Yep, thank you. Okay, back on to the positions.
So can I speak on that?
Yeah.
The other thing I was thinking too is, I don't know, it's just throwing it out there, but, we need another maintenance worker. Can we do a maintenance / managerial or whatever you want to call it, administrator to take care of the jobs, like to be a head
Yeah.
person.
That'd probably be a really special kind of person. Right? Like, are you saying they would
Depends
do
what you're-
maintenance and like manage office staff?
Not so much manage office staff, but you have other staff that we need
Like,
people in charge
okay.
of, so.
Yeah, it can be, I mean, technically, I guess it could be anybody.
Cause otherwise you're looking at office person telling maintenance, you know what I mean? It's all, what's the difference?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Manager's a manager, doesn't matter what their other position is, so if we have somebody that's got a class A or and can plow and has managerial skills, I don't see.
The only thing is if they're out plowing, if they're out hot patching, those kind of things. I view, and again, I'm just one person. I'm fine with anybody, but I viewed it as a person that is going to be managing the overall township, including employees, that they're available the majority of the time by being in the office. Because if somebody's sick, if somebody gets sick, if somebody gets injured, you know, it's gotta be, you know, no, like I said, I totally respect that. Like I said, I'm just one.
Actually, I think it's kind of counterintuitive, but I think it makes sense because, I mean, we're talking about a coordinator managing all the staff in the township. There's lots of managers who are mechanical or maintenance who, you know, they know how to handle vacation requests, handle somebody sick, that kind of stuff. But I wonder what would work better. Like a lot of the jobs in the township, especially the ones that kind of require like a day-to-day, like, hey, this is happening, what do we do? A lot of that is maintenance related or in recycling. And so I wonder, as counterintuitive as it might be, if it might make sense to have the person who we hire for public works hire somebody who has managing experience, like no doubt, but they have a lot of experience with the majority of the stuff that the township deals with, which is working with their hands, trees down, whatever. But they also, you know, can use a computer, can do email. It's just a thought.
Hey, there's no bad ideas or anything like that. So, no, I appreciate you bringing that up. I didn't think of it from that perspective. But I think I think our ultimate goal is, and we've used this term before, subject matter experts. Because not one person's gonna know everything. Not one person's gonna know recycling, senior center, how to drive a truck, or, you know, how to do a function in the office. So
Sure.
I think it's really whoever is coordinating it is gonna have to be somebody that can quickly identify who their subject matter experts are. We even talked about that when we talked about removing the supervisors from the liaison roles. Is, you know, okay, so, you know, what if the clerk has a question about road and bridge? You know, and then what does she do? And it was like, well, she knows which supervisors have dealt with that, and she's gonna call one of those supervisors for advice. So
Yeah, that's true.
I think no matter who it is, whether it's a person in public works or person in the senior center, whoever it is gonna have to know who their subject matter experts are to get that information. I mean, right now too, it's like, you know, the women in the office, they're not all plowing, but they deal with how many questions about, you know, roads that aren't done or
Yeah.
stop signs that have been knocked over, you know, and they know who to call. They pick up the phone and they say, John.
Yeah. And on second thought too, I mean, the people who are in the office are always available versus if it was a maintenance person, they might be going to working on something and they're not going to be available. Like they're not going to be on their computer for most of the day. So that might not work due to their availability. Might be better to have them be in the office.
Still something to keep in the back of our mind and consider. Like I said, I don't have an issue. I can see it both ways. Yeah, Julie?
So I just want to piggyback off the thought that you had too about, I didn't see on the org chart that there's a deputy clerk position on there. Would that be a position that would be easily meshed with the office coordinator or the staff coordinator position? And also being able to fill in for the clerk for checks and other things like Sandy was talking about, like in a pinch if there was a need. for
Sure.
that.
I can chime in with just a
Yes.
quick 2 cents on that. Is the deputy clerk is a kind of a statutory creature as well, right? It comes from statute. As a result of that, you need to understand where the power lies with the deputy clerk, and it's with the clerk. So the town board's only authority over deputy clerk is essentially setting their pay. The hiring and firing of the deputy clerk is comes with the clerk. And so that's an issue that you can have is, you know, the deputy clerk, maybe there's a way to structure it. And I've got to think about this to where if you do deputy clerk and coordinator as one role, if the clerk gets mad and fires the deputy clerk one day, will they keep the coordinator title?
Right.
Yeah, probably. And they would probably also keep same pay. I'd need to think about the logistics of this a little bit, but I want you to think about that hiccup when contemplating this question is that the clerk has a lot of power over the deputy clerk. That can create a weird interplay.
Yeah, I know Len Township, they had a deputy clerk and a deputy treasurer, and neither of them were employees of the township. They were other people that the clerk or the treasurer knew and asked if they would stand in. And, you know, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a job title type position. Yes, Sam?
Is there a world in which we do part-time clerk, part-time treasurer, full-time coordinator? And then reduce the clerk and the treasurer to just the statutory? Because what I've been hearing is that if you break those roles down to just statutory, it's not 40 hours a week. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I've heard from a few people now. So instead of combining them and dealing with the fallout if they take leave or if they take their leave or quit, you still have two separate roles, two separate specialties. They're covering just the statutes. And then there is a office coordinator who is overseeing everybody, is that middle person between the board and then office assistants. And then we meet our budgetary needs.
I never thought of it that way. Yeah, we definitely have to walk through that process. Cause there's in the budget, it's 2 part-time people and 2 full-time people. So how that lays out, I guess, is up to the board ultimately.
And we could also, I mean, with staff as it is now, we could also have, for example, either the clerk or the treasurer take on additional responsibilities to make that full-time. So you have full-time coordinator, full-time either clerk or full-time treasurer, but whichever role is getting boosted to full-time, they would have additional, like we do now, additional non-statutory responsibilities added to their position just so we aren't dealing with so many part-time employees. But because I think one thing that's clear is coordinator, and there's no world in which coordinator is part-time, right?
No, I
So
don't think so.
that's one piece of the Sudoku puzzle that you can count on.
Yeah.
Whatever the coordinator role is, it has to either be attached to a full-time role or it has to be a full-time role in and of itself.
I see. So what you're saying is you're looking at a way of keeping all 3 of those roles separate from each other.
Mhm.
So none of them, no 2 fall on a single person though.
Yeah, because I think there's some pretty legitimate concerns about like that one person, for one, finding somebody who's capable of both, because they really are kind of different specialties, and 2, that person goes on Christmas vacation and
Mhm.
we're down two critical roles.
The only thing I worry about with making either one of those part-time would be the level of commitment and how fast we may change those people over.
Right. Okay.
You know, if they're a part-time treasurer, they're doing it because they want to help and they enjoy it. But when the kids get busy in school, they kind of say, I think I'm gonna move on. And
Yeah.
that's the only thing I'd be really concerned about.
And
with
those
that.
aren't roles where you want turnover.
No, we don't want turnover there. I don't think anyway.
There was a point of time where we had 3 full-time staff in the office, right? We had the full-time planning and zoning, full-time clerk, full-time treasurer,
3 full-time and 1 part-time.
and 1 part-time.
Mhm.
And so we've
Come on,
we've reduced since then.
you gotta sit, if you don't speak into the microphone, that people are gonna be
We
mad at you.
when we had the building inspector, who was planning and zoning, there were 3 full-time. There weren't 3 full-time because the treasurer was not full-time at that point. The treasurer did not become full-time until after Alyssa started. And by that time, we didn't have full-time in planning and zoning. So there were 2 full-time people in the office and then the rest were part-time. And at that point, it would have been the 240s, and then the deputy clerk's office assistant was definitely part-time, and planning and zoning was part-time. So we didn't ever have 3 full-time people. If we did, it would have been for a week or something. I mean, that was not part of it, because again, the treasurer only, just as John said, they're going to probably want to move on at some point for full-time. And that was somewhat, in order to get this qualified person, they had to offer full-time. And so that, and then started finding duties. She would negotiate contracts. I mean, she had a lot of other duties. It definitely was not just treasurer. I think she said payroll's 5 hours a month. I mean, you can say that all these things take a long time. They really didn't. So that was how that happened. But no, there weren't 3 full-time people.
Yeah, what I remember when I came on the board, I think part of the justification with going with a full-time treasurer and finding enough duties to make that a full-time was they were having issues with covering the phones, covering the office, keeping it open during normal hours. So they ended up, that's why they made treasurer full-time, or part of the reason, not the only reason, but part of the reason was for that. And they also making the zoning administrator position full-time. They always had 3 people. So if somebody was in training, somebody got sick, there was always somebody in the office to keep it open. Yeah, Joel?
John, I just want to clarify something. What I said before, that I didn't find any minutes in there, and I have got no minutes. The township website has no minutes from September until January about P and Z.
Are you on the old website, sir?
I'm on both websites. I went on both of them and it didn't show up. Okay, it was just on the old one and the new one on my phone. And neither one showed up on the website.
I'm not pulling from any magical file. I have the website here, and then the direct agenda packet that pulls up talks about that from whatever date it was.
The
that I
one or
sent.
the old one?
The new website, sir.
I'm on the new one right now. And it shows September 16th of 2025. And the next minutes or agenda or packet shows January 20th. I don't show anything on my thing. And I went on my computer at home. I did the same thing. So I'm not saying I'm blowing smoke, but I looked for information that I was said, it's in the agenda, it's in the minutes. I couldn't find it on the computer site with the township.
Are you in the town board meeting minutes?
I'm in the planning minutes.
That's why you're not finding it. So the town board authorizes all employees, independent contractors, et cetera. The board has that authority. Under Minnesota
Wasn't
statute,
it brought up at the planning and zoning meeting in November?
I'll just explain statutorily how it works. The planning and zoning commission is an advisory body to the
Right.
board.
I understand
So
that.
any hiring practices, et cetera, are authorized by the town board. And so what the town board did at this November meeting was the town board, in the absence of a zoning administrator, when our zoning administrator had resigned, was that the township then contracted with Ms. Nash to provide those services.
Okay. But why wasn't the planning commission advised of that? At least it's not reflected in the P and Z minutes from November. I was told by Andy that it would be, it was in your minutes and that there. For one thing, there's no November minutes. And in the P and Z, and they're somewhere out there because they did have a meeting. I was gone, but they did have a meeting in November. Those minutes aren't reflected on the planning and zoning. And again, that's staff, office staff, whatever happened. I don't know. But again, I looked for it. And I didn't look through town board minutes. And I agree, town board has the authority to appoint and discharge or whatever they want to do. But when I was told it's in your minutes, it's not there. And Billy had said that when she was here, she couldn't find stuff from November. She didn't know where it went to. And whether it disappeared in the transition from old website to new website, I don't know. But it's not on the township website. And I guess that's a misleading thing from my viewpoint, that, you know, you say, well, it's all out there, just get it. And it wasn't there.
Yeah, let's, if you don't mind,
I know.
I'm willing to stay after the meeting is adjourned. I'm willing to stay and work through that with you.
It'll come up in the
or,
future, don't worry.
no, that's fine. Or we can meet up here tomorrow and,
Tomorrow night it's gonna come up, so.
okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. Yep. Thank you, John.
Chairman Olson, do you remember what the comment was that you had made just previously, or if anybody else does? Because I had something I wanted to comment in addition to that. I can't remember what it was though.
I had commented on, having the coverage in the office. That's part of the reason why we went to full-time was so that we had coverage.
And part of that, thank you. That's exactly what I was thinking about. Having somebody who is the coordinator, then if you have people in the office, the coordinator's job is to move people around and position them, and you need people in order to reposition people. So, you know, that coordinator can either step up themselves and pick up phones or whatever the need is for the day. But, you know, they also need to have staff in the office to be able to redirect and manage people effectively if somebody's absent or out on leave, et cetera.
Sure, thank you. All right. So how do we envision, we can't combine, it doesn't sound like combining clerk and treasurer is a wise idea. We've already said that. We've already identified that budgetary wise, we probably can't in our budget absorb the extra cost of 3 individual full-time people doing each one of those tasks. So what's everybody's thought on an alternative?
Can I ask, maybe
Yeah.
you could say what's by statute, the clerk's position is, maybe that's the easiest one to go part-time if you have a qualified coordinator. Somewhat the clerk makes sure the township's following statutes. If your coordinator has that role, the clerk's role is much more minimal. So maybe you could cover that with the board of what, if a clerk position could be part-time, maybe more than the treasurer.
Okay, thanks.
And for the board to make that determination, this is also, if there's a public packet that was provided of this, it's that section A of the clerk's duties that's in the clerk's job description. That's all the statutory duties. And in addition, as I noted, for clerk, also think about adding in some additional elections duties that are in statute as well. And then when you go over to the treasurer's job description, the treasurer's statutory duties are not 367.11, they're 367.16. And those duties are there as well. You know, there, as you look through these job descriptions, there are probably some other small things that just make sense to go hand in hand with the statutory duties. And so keep that in mind when you're thinking about it. You don't need to strip it quite literally to the exact bare bones you possibly can. Might make sense to keep a thing or two. But if you are trying to look to narrow down the requirements of a job, those would be those section A components of the treasurer and clerk job descriptions are the ones that you'd be looking at.
Okay, thank you. Lisa, any thoughts? References, questions?
None at this time.
Okay, Andy?
I think we're trying to correct, solve too much at once. We can all agree on the coordinator. I think that needs to get in place, and then that person has all the input that we're trying to get a person to provide. We're trying to build from the bottom underneath and not have that person in place to provide the input and build their own team, provide input.
We still have to answer the first question though, which is it gonna be a separate job function being coordinator? Because if it is, then we can approach it, I think, how you're stating it, so they do have input. But if that coordinator function is gonna be included in somebody else's job duties, then we need to attack that.
From what I'm hearing, I think the most realistic option is it has to be combined, at least to start. Long term, you know, coordinators combined with something later on, if that's not working or if that's too hard, we could, the coordinator could tell us that and we could split that off to a different part-time, whatever the rest of their job duties happen to be. And then they could go to full-time coordinator. But I think the number one most important thing is I think we have to have a coordinator like ASAP. Cause like Andy's saying, like, otherwise we're kind of just building this from the bottom up. So I'm open to combining coordinator into an existing role just to get us started, even if I think the long-term vision for this is maybe 3 full-time roles or coordinator as its own individual full-time role, that can be settled later, as long as we have somebody filling that role in some capacity as soon as possible.
Oh, very good. Yeah, that's the hard part, is when the budget doesn't support three individual positions at a rate that I'm assuming we're gonna have to pay.
Mhm.
You know, kind of limits our options. The other thing is too, is that to move forward with a specific role as coordinator, I'd love it. I think it's the right thing ultimately for the township. I know some people won't agree with me, but I think that we should have had a town administrator back a while ago. I know our past clerk worked a lot of hours trying to kind of fulfill those roles without the title. So I think it's kind of been there for a while. But again, that's got to be a decision of the town or the townspeople, not the town board. So, and if we try to fill these with the assumption that we put it on a ballot and they allow us to combine some things, what if they don't? What if in November we put a question on a ballot that we want to combine something or separate something out and the people don't vote in favor of it? So whatever we put in place has to be, in my mind, something that if the townspeople doesn't support what our long range vision is, our short range vision has to be something that's sustainable until the next time that it can be put on a ballot, which is going to be 2.5 years out. Yeah, Dan.
What about we do the treasurer and / town administrator?
The coordinator roles,
Coordinator, yeah.
sure. That's definitely an option. Definitely an option. I think given the people that are here, it might be something that we want to explore with our existing staff. They haven't been included in on this, so. But I think kind of, even if we look at a couple different options and look at option 1, 2, and 3, and then kind of explore them at the same time, which is kind of the action items I talked about following this meeting. You guys are welcome to chime in if you have any strong thoughts, or you don't have to. Yes, Andy. Okay,
Yeah,
Andy.
I mean, the other aspect of it is the reporting structure, and this person, whatever task is. I mean, we're at currently would be at 8 direct reports. And not, you know, that's not pending the other ones and other things along that line, so that in itself is workload as well, managing people.
Yeah, for sure.
One thought that I've had that I know we had conversations before because we said, okay, the whole premise of this is taking the board out of the day-to-day supervisor job of being a manager, not an elected official, right? We had talked about there still being, I think Andy's right, the way this is structured, we're looking at 8 reports, but we were also talking about, you know, supervisors serving as liaisons, as just merely conduits of information, and that being very clear in a written policy that you guys have, that, you know, coordinator runs the show, but the supervisors help be conduits of information back, and you appoint individuals essentially as a part of the job descriptions in each department. You don't appoint them, you modify their job description to report to the liaison, the supervisor, one of you all, the conduit information, you bring the information back to the board. That was floated in the past, not suggesting that. Maybe all this information needs to funnel through the coordinator. I just wanted to bring that idea of the past back into play and see how the board thinks it fits with the conversation we're having now of what you would expect of a coordinator. Because if you're saying coordinator plus existing job, like coordinator clerk might be a lot, coordinator treasurer might be a lot. Is this a release the pressure valve to have you all play the information of you twice a month get a report of information from whoever's tasked with writing that report in whatever department, or you all call them departments? What do you call them?
Departments and committees.
Committees, you know, either one, right?
Yep.
Just
Yeah.
thought I'd put that back out there.
Yeah, ultimately, I'd love to see where, instead of the board providing liaisons to the committees and departments, the committees and departments provide liaisons to the board.
Mhm.
You know, this way, all 5 board members get equal information at the same time. There's no supervisor trying to remember all the things that they need to report to the board and omitting something that might have been important. And whereas, and people that, you know, are really vested into that information exchange is the committees. and they know that they have to communicate to the board effectively. And I think that's where we're probably gonna get our best and efficient communications.
Isn't it the job of the liaison to report to the committees and then report from the committees back to the town board with the conversation? That was a liaison. That's a concept of a liaison. So, I mean, for you to say that the liaison should come from the committees, that differs from what the responsibility of board members are. Because the boards are the ones that are doing the voting and the deciding on stuff. Planning Commission and Parks and everybody else is recommending stuff. But the liaison should pass on the information from the committees to the board in as good a information, as good of a context as they can. So I mean, the liaison, it just about has to be a board member. See, from committees, I mean, there can be communication from a chairperson or whatever to the town board liaison. But I don't think the liaison should be from a committee, not directly. The other question I had was, you're talking about a township coordinator. What's the job description of a coordinator? You haven't even established that yet, what their responsibilities and stuff are. And that is I mean, you're gonna hire somebody to do something that they don't really have a job description? Then that's
Coordinator functions are identified in the job descriptions. If you look through those, the ones that have
we
a
have
C
it in
behind it,
our.
it's in the packet. Yeah. If you look, it'll be like section E or
H.
So
H,
you're gonna have to look
section
for
H.
somebody with them qualifications before you designate a coordinator
Correct,
that's able to perform those duties.
right? Whether it's internal or external, correct. That's what we're looking for.
No, you passed out so many pages and I
Yeah,
couldn't
sorry about that, but
absorb all of them if it's in there, but just.
the one that has the
saying.
jobs, the
Yeah.
job title has a C behind it.
But I
Yeah.
think that the liaison thing, again, I think it should be a board member that's responsible for their areas of responsibility and their liaison. That, as far as going to the committees for liaison, I don't think that's the way to go.
Yeah.
But my own
Yeah,
opinion.
no, we'll have that debate
I know.
here at some point.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks, Joe.
So Chair Olson,
Yes.
if I can think of a easy way to conceptualize this, because I'm trying to picture of what's the line of when maybe an employee who is acting as a liaison, board completely steps back off of this role. If you've got an employee acting as a liaison, when do they do something like per se, write a, quick report or summary update for the board every 2 weeks? Or when do they go directly to the coordinator for, something that needs to happen? And your urgent day-to-day, a lock's broken on a door, it's got expensive machinery equipment in there. That's the type of thing I'm picturing. You go to the coordinator, say, hey, we need to get a lock for this, get this figured out. The just updates on, here's our numbers in recycling this month. What should the hours be next week? That's something that I could go in a report to the board, and doesn't have to cloud out the coordinator because it's not day-to-day coordination. It's something that could just be a part of their duties every 2 weeks. You file it with the clerk and the clerk puts it in the meeting packet of what the report is. That to me helps take some of the pressure off of the coordinator. So that way they're not coordinating literally everything in the world. And some of that information naturally trickles back to the board by your employees bringing that information up in a report once a month, twice a month, whatever it is, so that the board can take action on some of those things and is informed. And then the coordinator handles the day-to-day.
Yeah, departments, absolutely, absolutely. I think that's kind of what we've been trying to get to for efficiency. And again, we created all these rules for the board, and one of them is what one knows, all knows. And well, how do you do that if you only have one or two people that are dealing with a department or dealing with a committee? So that's why I think, and again, it may not work out. We may keep it the way it is, but I think it's worth the discussion to figure out if there's a better way, a more efficient way that we can be doing things that we aren't right now. I've looked at some of the other townships, and most of the townships that I've looked at, they actually have their committees that either do a report or they'll usually do a report. And if it's something important or they're looking for funding, then they'll send at least one liaison to the board to speak on behalf of the committee.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, go ahead, Lisa.
I actually have talked to a few people where townships where that's how they do it. They have someone come to the board rather than a board member being at the meetings.
Yeah. Sam?
So I was just gonna ask, in terms of the coordinator, the only option I've heard that seems realistic to me is, at this exact moment right now, is treasurer plus coordinator combined. Is there any other option that's on the table that's not something that's like, has to go on the ballot or would be 3 years down the road when the budget's different? Is there any other options on the table besides combining treasurer and coordinator?
Oh. Yeah. Yeah, I think you just answered his question, didn't you, Sandy? Yeah, yeah, and some of that'll have to change the reporting structure in there, but yeah, the one that says town clerk alone is a job description without the coordinator role. And the one that has a C written behind it is the one with that section H, which is the coordination tasks.
I, I guess my thought would be at the moment, Sam, you're probably right on. And if Alicia is willing to, and it can change 6 months down the road. She goes, this is not working for me at all. And then you've had time to see how it works and do it. But your hands are, okay, I won't go into, but your hands are somewhat tied right now of what you're going to be able to do. And if she's willing to even take it on an interim basis, it might be your best bet to start with. And yes, maybe the job description is not going to be perfect even after a week. Maybe you're going to have to do some tweaking with it to just even keep you floating, but you're probably better off doing that for the time being. And again, if it's working, great, you can offer raises or whatever, but if it's not working for her, she can say, you guys have to make your coordinator be your new clerk, or,
Right.
but it gives you a little bit of time to try something.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. Oh, we haven't had that dialogue, so we can't. Have to have that dialogue as probably one of the action items after the meeting, so. So it sounds, if I'm correct in what I'm hearing, is we have to combine 2 of the 3 roles together somehow. Now it's just a matter of what 2 roles get coordinated together. That's gonna be at least for the interim. And I would guess that, like Sandy said, is if things are going really, really well, maybe it never changes. But I think long range, I like what Andy said, which is ultimately, I'd still like to go with an explanation of the township of what a town administrator would do and bring. And leave it up to the townspeople to decide whether they want that or not. And if they decide that they do on a ballot question, then we know that we can start modifying things accordingly. Because I do think that it's, there's a lot of work that gets done in that office, way more than I ever realized until probably a year or so after I got on the board. And so we need to be cognizant of that.
Well, and I mean, with the coordinator, there's gonna be more work that goes to the office, right? Cause now instead of Public Works calling you, or calling me or whoever, they're calling the coordinator, so there's more coming
Yep.
through the office.
Yeah.
So obviously people are gonna say, well, it's all about increasing the size of the office, but that really is kind of the heart of the township's function, like operations.
Yeah, yeah,
So-
and it may or may not. I'm not necessarily suggesting we go to 5 people.
Sure.
But we may have to modify something in there too. Somehow to where we keep it at 4.
Mhm.
But, so if the board, thinks that long-term, I guess we don't want to act on, do we want to, is it premature to look at putting, a ballot question out there about a town administrator for this November? Because again, if we combine 2 of the positions, and then it's working really well, we may not put it on there, but what does 84 days give us? Do you have any
I
idea?
said this at
3
the,
months?
yeah, it was somewhere around the beginning of August.
Okay, so we have plenty of time.
That would be the 84 days, because I was thinking affidavits of candidacy then. So it would be middle of August.
If they vote to go with the township administrator, are we then obligated to fill that role? I'd imagine yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Okay.
yep, absolutely.
So keep budget in mind with respect to that.
Would it have to be full-time? Or just enough to fill the statutory obligations,
The
which
latter.
probably would be full-time if we were really
For
being
the
serious
coordinator?
about it. Yeah.
So when you get into
Or administrator.
if,
Yeah.
when you get into adopting the different form of government for town administrator, it's kind of a laundry list of statute that I think we've put up on the board before, but then another section of it is either by, I think it's by resolution, you can establish additional duties. And that's where a bulk of it comes into, is it's where you get to place your hands on the administrator role and help meld it around what kind of the statutory nuts and bolts are. And so that is something that if the board more seriously is contemplating that, we can craft that language, some ideas, and come back with a job description for that before you all make a decision of, do we want to put this on the ballot? I think it could really help you to see, here's what we would, think would fit in this job description and what we by resolution would require them to do.
I think before putting it on the ballot, it would be prudent to just do a trial run like we're saying, and see how it works out. And that would better equip us to make the pitch of, this is what the role has looked like in a part-time capacity or combined capacity. This is what it would look like in a full-time capacity, and here's why you should vote for it. But as of right now, I think if we put it on the ballot, I don't know if we know exactly whether that's the direction that we want to go.
So, being that we have time, we should probably, one of the things for an action item is that we should probably have one or two people spend some time, like Mark said, there's statutory requirements for the town admin, is maybe document all of that, get that laid out. Maybe look at other townships, that are doing this. And get some information from them. They're probably gonna say either that it's a big job for one person, or they might say you can take other things on, but that way we come back with a little bit more informed, a little bit more of an idea of what we can do and what we can't do.
Our office represents a fair share of townships. I can ask the two partners if they're aware of any other townships that have adopted town administrator statutes. We could connect you with them so you can have a conversation. The other thing is just for, if anybody wants some light reading tonight, it's Minnesota statute 367.35. It's option C, town administrator,
Thank you, Mark.
367.
0.35.
See.
And it is just called option C out of all of the options. The combining clerk treasurer is option D. This is option C. Don't ask me the other two options off the top of my head.
Sure. Sandy?
Going to an administrator.
Can you
those-
speak into the,
Couldn't those same duties be done under the heading of coordinator? Just like if you're going to start out with a coordinator, try to make sure the duties somewhat fit into it, and maybe not even worry about the administrator this year, even though it's the same type of duties. And then maybe by the next election, you'll really know what you want, but it gives you some time. So as you're doing a job description for coordinator, be looking at the statute for administrator and incorporate at least some of them in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we also, since there has not been conversation with current staff either, we don't even know if they're interested. So they may not be interested, and then we have to kind of pivot again. Does anybody want to, I mean, I'm fine if nobody else wants to, but does anybody want to dig into, the town administration?
I'd be
Well,
happy
yes.
to do that. When do you need it by?
I'd like to get through this rather quick. We've got, maybe if we can bring it back at the workshop, this next meeting, that'd be next Tuesday.
Okay. Yeah.
And if you want me to help you, or if somebody else wants to,
So you can get the list of inquiring options, and we can
Yep.
at least be reaching out to other towns.
Or do you want to do it?
I can help with that.
Yeah, I certainly can help facilitate that. Just a reminder for the board, I will be out of town on the 21st, or whatever date that is. Is that the 21st?
24th.
That's-
The next-
20,
the next
21st is
meeting.
a Saturday.
I leave 20, I'm gone 21 through 25. If you would like Bob Rupee present to help facilitate that conversation, Bob can be as well. I can't speak for him. I need to talk to him first,
Sure.
but let me know and I can check with him as well if you'd like an attorney present.
okay. So you're gonna work on statutes, and Sam and Andy are gonna work on identifying all the information regarding the town admin.
Sure.
And again, it may not even be an end result for us, but let's get the information. We also have another task, which is, let me ask this. So then, as I understand it, is the board in agreement with, at least in an interim basis, attempting to merge two of the positions together, the coordinator with either the clerk or the treasurer? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, pending
they're willing.
conversations.
Yeah, pending conversations,
Yeah.
okay. So then that makes the next action item, which is to follow up with existing staff on those options. And I would be happy to be a part of that, if anybody else would like to.
Yeah, I'd be a part of that.
Okay, is everybody okay with that? All right, okay, so that's kind of the discussion about the town administrator, the coordinator, treasurer, clerk. And did anybody have any issues with the job descriptions? I know we've had them for probably a month and a half. I kind of went through them and I had a couple comments in there, but
And I think was there a workshop or a town board meeting in the past where some comments were made with respect to the job descriptions? Because I know in my office, I have a binder with handwritten notes with respect to some comments that I've already received on them. So it was my intent to integrate those comments at the direction of the board at some point. But I'll definitely field any additional comments that the board has and happy to draft those into the job descriptions.
I think it's January.
so if maybe we do it this way. Alicia, I hate to ask you, until our clerk is back, would you mind being a focal point for information being disseminated to you? Okay, so what I would suggest is that if you have any comments or changes on these, get them to Alicia like in the next 48 hours, if you can. I've had just a couple, was all pretty minor stuff. But then she can combine them together and get them out to us. What I'd like to do is be able to take board action on approving these, because we can't hire anybody and we can't move anybody into any positions until the board's accepted these. Right now, we're still operating with the old ones. Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
And it's pretty simple. You don't have to do both clerks or both treasurers. Okay, so that's accountant, treasurer, that's clerk. Now we have this other one called office assistant. And we currently have two part-time positions in our budget identified for this role. So I read through this. Again, same thing, is try to get your comments back to Alicia. Does anybody have any comments or anything that should be updated or changed? Is staff aware of anything? You probably maybe never seen this until tonight, so maybe take a look at it, and which is really sad to say that, by the way. But maybe take a look at this and then also provide feedback for Alicia and Julie if you guys want to share that and put those comments in also. You guys know the job. And then if we define anything such as a subject matter expert for zoning and administration or those kind of things, we should probably, once we can hire for this position, then maybe those fall under that additionally assigned duties.
And I do have one additional thought here, just a small change to the assistant job description. The reports too, I would include office supervisor and office coordinator, just to keep it consistent with the idea of the rest of them are reports to coordinator as the supervisor. That way, it's just crystal clear.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, Cindy?
I have a question. When you were saying like what you have budgeted is 2 full-time, 2 part-time, is that planning and zoning as well? You're planning, because I when Susan was here, there was a third full-time person, but that was planning and so if you've contracted that out, are you bringing any of that back into the office? Because if you are, that limits how much you have for payroll, or was that a separate line budget?
No, I can only share what my thoughts are because I haven't talked to any of the supervisors.
No, I'm just talking
Yeah.
on the budget.
Yeah.
Did two part-time, two full-time include planning and zoning coordinator? Or like what Susan's job was?
Not as a full-time.
She was full-time though.
In my mind, I pictured it as office assistant, and that would be an additionally assigned duties. They would become the subject matter expert. And then it's up to the board whether we keep Cindy on or not, but we may not
I
have to use her services as often.
I see what you're saying. So that's included in your lump sum of it.
Correct. It
So
would
you do
change, I
have to
think.
be somewhat cautious on where else you can hire.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And again, I didn't mean to speak on behalf of the board. So if you guys, anyone wants to chime in your thoughts, that's fine.
I think planning and zoning is such a big animal that the town's always gonna need to have outside input or something to it.
Outside and then that continuity, from in-house. Yeah,
I
absolutely.
hate to come up
Yeah,
here,
Joe?
keep talking on that there, but to do with planning and zoning. When Susan was hired on as a zoning administrator and enforcement official, those were the two job description stuff. Now, when I talked to her, she said she didn't have much time for enforcement stuff as far as ordinances. But the zoning administrator, we had a good working relationship back and forth, and she did a good job of research and stuff. But the enforcement part of it, and I've said this before, the township can adopt all the ordinances they want. If nobody's enforcing them, where are we at? And it's been a difficult thing with enforcement, I know, and I, as a board member in years past, we tried to do it, but it kind of hit a block wall because when we went to serve notice or something, the attorneys would say, well, it wasn't complete enough or one thing and another. And again, I don't know where the township can go with enforcement, but for the planning and zoning to work on any ordinances without enforcement on the backside of it, it means nothing.
Sure.
And yet the planning and zoning has tried to put guidelines in our ordinances to give the office direction of what to tell people when they walk in the door. And that's the best thing we can do. Enforcement, that's not part of planning and zoning's job, but somewhere along the line, the township needs to be responsible for it somewhere.
Yep.
And again, not that you'd put that duty on the zoning administrator or whoever it is, but that's a factor of having rules and being able to make them stick,
Sure. Yep.
And I know they'll probably come around to bite me when I say that. but
No,
whatever.
we won't lose track of that either. No, absolutely. Thank you, Joe.
And that is a function that I play for a lot of the municipalities that I represent is obviously at some point enforcement actions may need to go into district court in order to get a court order to enjoin someone to stop doing something. That is services our office provides.
Okay. House on office assistant. Okay, we do have an open position there that has not been filled yet either. So that's something that I think once we can sign off on that job description, then maybe the board wants to move forward with taking action so that we can get that posted and go through a hiring process. So,
Maybe once you get a coordinator in place, they can help you with the job description because they will know this is where we're lacking. So
Yep.
possibly before you fill that position, you want to find out from the current staff where there's gaps now that you're shorter.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you. All right. We're coming up on an hour and a half. Anything else? So I got two action items right now, which is Mark, Sam, and Andy are gonna work on the town admin role and responsibility and statutes. And then Sam and I are going to talk with existing staff, kind of get a sense as to what they're comfortable with and what they aren't. With the intent of bringing this back to the workshop at this next workshop. Everybody okay with that? Am I missing anything?
Could we take a 1-minute recess just so I can speak with the chair?
Sure. All right.
Motion to recess.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We're recessed at 6:51 and we'll be back in just a minute. Lisa, we'll wait just a minute for Lisa. Great, everybody's back, so we'll come out of recess at 6:55 and resume the meeting. All right, so I'll go ahead and make a motion then on the action item. So I'll make a motion that Mark, Sam and Andy work on identifying the roles and responsibilities and statutory requirements for the town administrator in consideration of potentially putting it on the November ballot. And I also include authorizing John and Sam to talk to existing staff about possible changes in the office. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Last part of business tonight is that, of course, everybody's aware, our clerk Billy Larson is not in attendance tonight. Just to summarize, Billy had submitted a letter of resignation last Tuesday. Since Tuesday, she formally rescinded that resignation, which means that currently she is still considered an employee of the township. Since she's not here tonight, what we want to do is I'd like to get a letter sent off to her so that it identifies what the board's expectations are for employment, and that we do expect her to, if she's not rescinded, to resume her normal activities. And so what I would like to do is I'm going to make a motion. I would like to have our town attorney represent us in creating that document and informing Billy Larson. So I'm going to make a motion that we authorize the town attorney, Mark Alsites, to draft a notice of expectation and to get that to Billy Larson in whatever way he needs to.
Second.
All right, motions been made, seconded. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed. That motion carries 5-0.
And to be clear, the emphasis of that letter and focus, so the board is aware, will be that the board has acknowledged that Ms. Larson has rescinded that resignation and she's expected to return to full job duties.
Perfect. All right, anything else for tonight? All right. Hearing none, I'll make the motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed. Motion carries. Julie, Alicia, Mark, thank you very much for coming. Sandy, Bill's gone, but appreciate it.